Mongolia, a country that is now completely landlocked and stuck in between Russia and China. But this was not always the case. If you go back to 1206, you'll see that Mongolia had an empire that spanned all the way from Russia into Romania. I mean, the last Mongolia video was made 5 months ago. So make sure to subscribe so I can make more videos just like this. And the top comment on this video is what country I'll be playing next. Enough yapping. Let's get into how I successfully formed the Mongolian Empire. When I got into the game, I instantly started mountain specializing my infantry and got both the improve infrastructure and ignore safety regulations policies. These policies make my factory costs much cheaper and they allow me to make 5 factories, which are motor, steel, electronic, fertilizer, and civilian. If you go back, you'll see that I accepted the ally request from China. You might be saying, don't you need China to form? Why would you ally them? Well, I know that the other strats of Mongolia, they include instantly declaring on China and Russia and make them rush you so you can get them to rage quit and then you expand into them. But I feel like doing this makes the process much harder as you only have 60,000 starting manpower, so expanding into the Koreas and South Asia puts you in a better position to fight both China and Russia. I messed up by getting underground labs and max anti-corruption before my factories were done, but this was fine as it was a very small debt and I already had resources which allowed me to sell elegs and civilians to get me back out of debt. I honestly didn't expect a Russia-China war this early into the game, but Russia declared on China, which was my ally, so it forced me into the war. He also wasn't accepting my white peace, so I fortified my land and kept my home guard on my capital just in case he tried rushing into me. I made a couple of tanks and sent them into North Korea to start my expansion. Another good reason to ally China is because you can go through his lands without having attrition. So getting into the Koreas is very easy. Once I got into North Korea, I rushed right into his capital as it's a square city and also borders another square city. This makes it easier so I don't have to take over the smaller North Korean cities and then tire out my tanks and then at the end take their capital. South Korea became a player, and I didn't want to get into a player war this early into the game. But even if he wasn't a player, South Korea has a bunch of population which will completely ruin your spending laws, especially when you have max anti-corruption on for underground labs. So I recommend going around South Korea and into Taiwan or any other low populated South Asian country. After I annexed North Korea, I sent my tanks down into Taiwan. What I did not know was that Taiwan was allied to Japan. This isn't really a big problem because he would probably accept my white piece, but I was selling consumers to him and he was a player. And I know that he was not gonna accept another consumer trade, so I avoided Taiwan and instead went into Malaysia. South Asia had a Vietnam player, so I avoided expanding there and chose to expand into the Middle East. This is important because the Middle East borders Turkey and I could also take Iran to border Russia, and I need both of those countries to form. China gave up against Russia because he got into the debt, so I unallied him and then I sent a white piece to Russia. For some reason, Russia never wanted to accept my white piece. And now, since I had a good amount of treasury with a decent eco, I decided that it was time to get some real population. So I declared on Taiwan, which was allied to China and Japan. Russia wasn't accepting my white piece, but me declaring on Taiwan got me into a war with China, which helped a lot because I can't declare on a country while being in a war with them. So I started pushing into South Korea and Japan to get more population and a better place to spam tanks when I need to auto capture China. I also earlier justified on Iran, which is a perfect place for me to attack both Russia and Turkey and a good amount of population which will boost my manpower gain along with taking over Japan. Well. Of course, the US player had to come in and take over Manchuria, which I need to form. So I started justifying on him to forcefully take over his Chinese lands. After the justification ended, I instantly declared on the US. I took the tanks that were used to conquer Japan to take over his Manchurian lands and infantry with artillery support to defend him from using tanks to auto capture. He rushed his tanks into my fortified infantry and got destroyed. So I took over his lands and he decided to give me Manchuria. Almost all of China fell apart, so I justified on the releasables and made tanks in Japan to auto-capture. This may seem pretty easy, but I gained a huge amount of war exhaustion and got into over 6 billion debt after I finished taking over the releasables. This will be skipped over, but it took a huge amount of time to do, as I needed to take over the extremely mountainous parts, like Tibet, which gave me a huge amount of attrition, and more losses, which gained my war exhaustion. Finally, after hours, I took the last releasable in China and formed the Yuan dynasty. This makes it so much easier to form the Mongolian Empire, as now I have plenty of population and square cities, so taking over the Russian lands will be much easier now. I waited until my war exhaustion calmed down before I declared on Russia and the other countries that I needed to form. I made over 20,000 tanks to auto-capture because I wanted to make sure that nothing would stop me from being able to form. Yeah, I missed one single city in Kazakhstan. This is seriously what stopped me from forming. All I had to do was not fail the peace deal, but I mean, I clearly can't do that. Anyways, I won't make you wait. The truce I had to. Let's get to the truce ending. The Mongolian Empire has been brought back in the year 2037. Thank you guys for watching, and make sure to subscribe, or else.